What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing another video today. I'm recording this on Tuesday morning. I got back yesterday from Major 1. If you didn't see my previous video, we had a great time at the event. Show Activision, Esports Engine, FaZe Clan, the cast and crew of our show. I appreciate everybody that pitched in. But coming back from the event, I talked to a lot of folks, Sunday night and yesterday as well. And I have a good sense right now, some of sort of the earlier Rostermania buzz. Let me break that down for you and talk a little bit about some of the teams that are likely and may possibly make roster changes in the next few weeks. All right, first off, we're going to start with two teams that I think are 100% making roster changes, and these are based on conversations with folks I've had around the league and around some of these teams. So the first one up, as you see on our screen, is the London Royal Ravens. This team got off to a quick 2-0 start in the league, but since then have not won a game and crashed out of the tournament on the first day at Major 1. So, I don't think I want to say the M4 was the cause of this team's issues. I think there are other systemic things around the team that are probably causing some of this tension and negative performance, but they haven't played well. And I think with Matty Marshall, aka Tank, aka Scraps, now available for selection, got his visa issue sorted, he's in the United States, I do think it's about time, and the people around the league think it's about time that he will be inserted into this starting roster. And it becomes then a question of who for, because I don't think you can really drop Asim. He's probably playing the best on the team right now. I think you probably need Nasty purely because someone's got to be kind of more that aggressive kind of a second sub sort of flex player, although I could see Scraps theoretically fill that role, but I don't think that's likely. I think pretty much the answer is Paul X going to get dropped or is Zero going to get dropped? And I don't really have the answer to that question just yet. If I had to take a guess, purely kind of just based on sort of my institutional knowledge of COD, it might be Paul, but it really could be either. From talking to people around the league and just sort of people that know these conversations, Scraps is going to be coming in. So I think we'll see based on some screenshots and probably some lobby leaks in the next couple of days once teams start scrimming, which players rotated out for this roster. Now, it's also possible that they make a second change. We had a lot of good players in challengers really increase their stock over the weekend, and I think I'll make another video and talk about that later this week. But I can see a couple of those players coming in. The only thing I'll say, because I'm sure someone will bring it up, like what about, Harry or Gizmo? I think the only difficulty with like one of them coming in this roster is I don't know what their visa situation is like. And if they don't have a visa that allows them to work in the United States, they can't play with this team. So that's the only kind of pause before people start saying like, London Harry, London Gizmo. If they don't have a P1, they don't have no visa where they can play, then for now, they're going to have to play challengers until that is sorted. All right, next up, we have Los Angeles Guerrillas, who I think probably of all the teams in the league probably had the worst sort of Major 1 experience. Outside of like one series, they've just been really poor this whole split. They've looked not particularly good in S&D, hardpoint, or control. And I think, all the concerns that people had, including myself, about running it back with a trio of Hook, Neptune, and Spark, I think have been realized. I don't think this team, in a sense, talking to people around the league, that this team's not really good enough to win, so changes will be made. They have a number of sort of interesting kind of pieces that they could sort of make changes with, which is a kind of interesting dynamic. Obviously, Joe Deceives is sort of their substitute on the team, although looking at the official CDL page, he's not listed there, but that might just be an error. The LEG Academy squad that Joe plays with actually won the Challengers Open this weekend, so could you see like Assault or Exceed end up on this team? I'm sure it's possible. I think for me, probably the first area they need to fix is decide on this trio which of these one or two players need to go. I think you're probably, of those three, probably keeping Kyler. So if you're making two changes, it probably means Spartan and Neptune are gone. Who's going to come in? Was it going to be one of these LEG Academy players? Or is it players that maybe Alec is comfortable with? You could see his brother Persini coming in, as played pretty solid in challengers, as well as Gunless could be a potential option in this roster. He used to be on the LEG squad as of last year, actually. And I think another interesting dynamic, and I'll get to it more later in the video, but as we talk about players on LEG and London, getting dropped from the roster, it may also then create a situation where they may have demand on another team and there could be buyouts. We'll cover that later in the video, but I think we're circling back on sort of the bigger LEG thing. I think this is probably a two-change situation, but I haven't heard any chatter of exactly who's coming in, who's coming out yet. It's very much a fluid situation. I could also see the LEG team trying like a couple of different rosters over the course of the next few weeks to figure out and see what sticks. Because right now they're in a real hole, and there isn't an obvious path on how to make this team better. There's a chance, and I think they can do it. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying right now it's not clear, and I think they're going to need to do a little bit of experimentation to figure it out, because they ran it back with a trio. It didn't work. It's time to move on and make changes. So those are the two teams that I think are like 100% talking to people around the league, pending anything crazy. And to be honest, LAG don't make a change. Oof. Those are two teams that will make roster changes. The next group of teams, and it's about 4 of them, are in this category of squads that might make a roster change. And what I mean by that is, and I'll walk through it when we discuss each of these teams. These are teams that I don't think played particularly well at Major 1. And from speaking with people around the league, players are either talking to other players on other teams about potentially teaming, or there's conversations internal about future moves. These are teams that are thinking about it. They haven't pulled the trigger on anything. They haven't really started the process. But they're in that bubble where, depending on how things go over the next 48 hours, we could start to hear about moves in some of these squads. Let's start off with OpTic Texas. So this team, obviously, as y'all know, ran up against their arch nemesis Florida at Major 1 and couldn't get it done. And unfortunately didn't really make it to the bracket portion of the tournament, which is really disappointing for them, because they definitely have the talent to be making Sundays with the squad. And it seemed like, just sort of watching them play, that, you know, they didn't seem to be all on the same page on what they wanted to do in respawn situations. And even in search, they blew a lot of rounds, and at one point at 5-2 map lead. I think chemistry on this team right now is not where it needs to be, and that was a big focus for them, you know, bringing the squad back. You know, they felt like last season that the hand injury for Illy kind of disrupted what was really good momentum after winning Major 1 last season. And, you know, they kind of pump fake making roster changes over the summer and then walked it back. And so now they're in a really weird spot of, did we make the right decision? Is running it back the right call, or do we want to pull the trigger now on making roster changes? From my understanding of this team right now, they are actually actively thinking about it. From speaking to folks around the league, there are a number of players who have been approached to potentially be part of roster changes around this team. I haven't yet confirmed, and I don't feel comfortable naming those players quite just yet, but I'm pretty confident that those conversations have happened. But here's the thing that I want to kind of pump the brakes on with this team. A number of the players they've spoken to are on CDL teams, so they would need to buy out those players, and some of those players just signed new deals in the offseason, so it's going to be large buyouts even if they are able to pull it off. I'm kind of putting this team in sort of the let's see what happens over the next like 2 or 3 days box. They have the money to make some of those moves happen, but it's going to be expensive. It's going to be a reversal. There's a lot of pieces that need to kind of align for those moves to happen, but this team's not waiting to see what happens until Major 2. Like, they are starting to evaluate what's out there and starting to have communications within the community about who actually is down to make and join this team, which I assume is most people, right? If OpTic comes to you, says, yo, let's team up, like, I don't think you're going to say no. This is a team I'm watching. We might have further updates later this week as things transpire. Next up, we have the Boston Breach, and you know, this is more of an update on this team. Like, I don't think at the moment they're going to make a roster change in between Major 1 and Major 2. They obviously had a very disappointing LAN event after playing pretty good online. You know, based on how that format of Major 1 went, like, if you had a bad Thursday, like, you were done. You were done the whole week. It is a team where apparently Big Wait got sick. They just didn't play the potential. And I thought this team, especially in the meta that we saw in Major 1, could have played particularly well. I think the big key on this team in terms of future roster changes is the fact that Beans, a sort of high ceiling player, is sitting there on a substitute role. So the sense talking around the league is that they're likely not going to make a change before Major 2. But if this team does continue to struggle, they're not going to wait and they will bring Beans up. Or if, let's say, they struggle, you know, first 2 weeks in the Major 2 cycle, that they might end up actually making a change before the LAN event. So I'll put a pin on this one. Right now, I haven't heard any strong Rostermania moves, but I do think that they had a disappointing event, and they're on my watch list to see what happens with them over the next like month and a half. We got the Vegas Legions, our next team we're going to discuss, and I actually thought that they probably should be, and maybe they aren't, but I think from my perspective should be happy with how they placed at Major 1. I think we always thought they were, you know, potentially going to be a top 6 and top 8 team, and that's basically where they landed. This team's in a little bit different spots than some of the other squads, because I think that this team is, when we talk about roster changes, in more of a position of trying to recruit people to join their project, because I like what I saw, especially from Temp and ProLoot this weekend. Clay was kind of super up and down, but I think he'll figure it out. And TJ had some good moments, but there's a really interesting project, and especially players like Clay and Temp definitely are well connected within the community, and they may start trying to see if there's some more promising talent out there that they may make changes around or maybe bring on as a more full substitute. This is a one to watch situation, because I thought TJ and ProLoot played fine, but if there is more talent out there at those roles, they may end up, you know, as Pat say, making you know, packer punching and making a change. Obviously the handicap is they don't offer huge salaries, so you know, if they talk to someone and a bigger team comes along, they may lose out on that. But let's see what happens with this team, because if they can upgrade, they're going to get nasty. I just don't know if they're going to pull it off. Conversations are probably, starting to happen around the squad. And last up, we have the Minnesota RØKKR, who after a really good online split did not have the best Major 1 experiences. They did, get through, past the group stage, but just bombed out immediately. And I think for this team, couldn't really get a handle on what the hardpoint meta was like this weekend. And honestly, they've struggled in game 1's hardpoints pretty much the whole Major 1 split. After much a conversation, I've talked about it a bunch on my channel about, hey, you're making these changes, try and get better in hardpoint. They didn't get better at hardpoint. This team is kind of a weird spot because also the players that they shipped away from the roster, and Preset and Standy, like their teams also played amazing at Major 1. So there's something weird going on with the squad. I don't think at the moment that they're going to, bring in Fame or Real or any sort of the RØKKR Academy players. But I also don't think that they're going to kind of let this team roll past Major 2 if they get in their top 8. Top 10 placing. They spent a lot of money to make this team better. If they're not making it to Sundays, they got to discuss if there's an issue going on with the roster, issues going on with the coaching staff, because it's been a number of years now where they've literally just only played good one weekend out of the entire year. I'm watching this team to see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Obviously the meta may shift with some of the patch changes, and we'll cover that on this channel later this week as teams start to scrim and get a handle on what the new meta is like. I've heard the spawn switches as well, so that's interesting. But this team didn't play well at Major 1. Might be a candidate to make a roster change after Major 2, or if they struggle a bit in the Major 2 kind of qualifiers. Because at the end of the day, this team should really be better than how they placed at this event, and they really should be better at respawn, and so far they haven't really showed that. So yeah, that's it for the video, guys. There's a lot of teams I didn't cover, but those are the squads that I'm hearing a lot of chatter about in terms of either making changes now, thinking about making changes, or there's discussion around the camp of we might pull the trigger on something if we really struggle the next few matches that we play starting in January. So there could be more roster changes upcoming. We'll cover those in future videos as things transpire. It's early, but people chat on Sunday and Monday nights, and so I wanted to give you guys kind of an update on where stuff sort of sat. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. If there are teams that I didn't cover you think should make roster changes, let me know. If you enjoyed the content, like the video, subscribe for more, and we'll see you guys on the next one.